Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another webinar with Dr. Horman. We're excited that you keep coming. That's a good sign. As per usual, if there's any questions or things that folks need assistance with, whether it's Zoom related or if you have a question but you don't feel comfortable asking it to the group, you can private message me. And I think that's all the housekeeping I have. So I'm just going to turn it over to Dr. Horman.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shauna. I'm really glad to be here today. For those of you who have not been with me before, I'll tell you that I have been in the field working with victims of sexual assault since 1975 and victims of domestic violence since 1978. Also, started working with survivors when we finally realized we needed to do a language shift from victims to survivors and their families. I have trained law enforcement, medical personnel, teachers. I've been in the field a long time. And in 2000, my colleague Pat Vivian and I made a shift and started looking system-wide at patterns in organizational cultures and began working with the concept of organizational trauma that was first developed by Howard Stein, who started working after the Oklahoma bombing. He looked at the impact on the whole community as well as on the organizations. So I've been primarily working with organizational cultures, building resilience, recovering from trauma since about 2000. I've been an educator. I taught for the University of Alaska Southeast in Juneau, for University of Washington, for the Muckleshoot Tribal College, and for Antioch University nationwide, both in their OD program and in their leadership program. So I would like to know a little bit about you. I would greatly appreciate your sharing your name, your agency and role, and your interest in joining today. And I will let you I'll open it up for people to come in, or I'll call on you if nobody speaks up. So I'd love to know your name, the agency, your role, and your interest in joining today.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Stephanie.
Hi, my name's Stephanie Edwards, and I'm the direct service coordinator at the Robeson County Rape Crisis Center. My goal is I want to work, sorry, I'm a little nervous now that I'm talking. But I hope to someday become like pretty much what you do, like work with survivors and work with people who've experienced trauma and abuse. And my purpose of being here is so that I can be as educated as I can be to help survivors the best way I can.
Thanks very much.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jessica.
Okay, my name is Jessica Vernon. I am an advocate with RACHE of Cherokee County over in Murphy. I've been doing this for 5 years now, almost 6. But I like to continue learning new ways of helping our clients and learning what the new protocols are with all this mess we got going on.
Okay. You'd like to learn the new protocols with all the very entertaining, interesting mess we have going on. Okay, I got it.
Absolutely.
My name is Rebecca. I'm the counseling program director at Our Voice, which is in Buncombe County. So Our Voice is a standalone rape crisis center. And I don't often frame my work as advocacy very much because I'm working very directly with the survivors. and with the other counselors and counseling students who are serving those survivors. But I do want to think more about the advocacy pieces of my work. And I was just really intrigued by I always think of advocacy as building bridges. I've never thought of it in that adversarial stance. And so I'm really curious about that. And I'm also thinking about like the advocacy that I may do for survivors. Like I think of it just in terms of care coordination with other providers or maybe out in the community, but I also am starting to think about it more like within our agency, when different parts of the agency might have different perspectives, different ideas, what might be best for survivors. And
Right.
I want to be able to better engage in conversations, both to listen to other perspectives and share share perspectives that I think might be important as well.
Okay. Well, I'll certainly give you some language and ideas to do that with.
Great, thanks.
Heather, would you like to check in?
Hello, I'm Heather. I work at Steps to Hope in Columbus, and I am the Communications and Development Coordinator here. We're a domestic violence and sexual assault agency, and I am the person who does a lot of the social media, a lot of the promotional stuff, the flyers, and I think that's a great way to advocate for our survivors.
Yeah.
And get the word out. And so I think I'm here to learn how I can do that better and better advocate for our clients.
Okay, thank you. Libby?
Hi, my name is Libby Chavez. I hope you can hear me well. I don't know if my microphone is working. Is it?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry, sometimes I have problems with it. I am the outreach educator and programs coordinator, and just like Heather, I work at Steps to Hope. We're located in Columbus, North Carolina, and my purpose for wanting to take this training is just, I think it's good to continue education. It's always good to learn more and more, especially when helping our clients. So that is the reason for
Okay,
today.
thank you. Let's see, how about Melissa?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, Melissa Kirkus. I'm the victim advocate at Family Guidance Center. We're in Catawba County, and I'm just here to absorb whatever knowledge I can. I probably attend every training that NC CASA sends out. So I just love to learn more about how to help survivors and what more I could be doing in my role.
All right, glad you're here. Daniela?
Sure. Hi, I'm Daniela Wassel-Dwornik. I am the Family Advocacy Center manager at Safe Light in Henderson County. So we're just south of Asheville. Let's see here. I've been doing gender-based violence and intimate partner violence work since 2006. So just really excited to think about advocacy in new ways. The world around us is changing, and if we don't change along with it, we're not going to be meaningfully representing the needs of the folks that we purport to serve. So really excited to think about advocacy just in new ways and hear the viewpoint that you can bring to the conversation.
Well, thank you. Maria, are you ready?
Hi there. Hope everybody's having a good day. My name is Maria Aversa. She, her pronouns. I work out of Our Voice in Asheville, and we help, we're a non-for-profit agency. We help survivors of sexual violence. And I specifically work with the Hispanic population. They contracted me as their bilingual, bicultural therapist. Thank you for having me today.
Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining. Let's see, Brittany.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Thomas. I currently do independent contract work. I've done work with NC CASA, but I've worked in gender-based violence, including stalking, sexual violence and domestic violence, as well as human trafficking. And some of the individual clients that I work with right now are social workers who are doing quite a bit of their own work, but also navigating organizational spaces that sometimes inflict their own traumatic experiences, particularly with women of color that I work with. So I was attracted to what seemed to be a little bit more of an organizational lean in this particular training.
Okay. And let's see, we have another Rebecca Alford.
Hi there. My name is Rebecca Alford. I am the outreach manager here at SafeLight, like Daniela, and I am just excited to hear what you guys have to share as it relates to kind of my role in outreach, but also my clinical work that I do here at SafeLight as well. So thanks for having us.
Okay. Monica, do you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Monica Johnson-Hausler, Executive Director at North Carolina Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and I'm glad to join you all today.
All right. Lovely. Okay. So just to feed some of this back to you, most of you are wanting to examine advocacy from some different perspectives, anything you can learn to boost your advocacy skills, that you're looking at the organizational perspectives when it comes to the roles that we have. You're looking at how you can help both survivors as well as looking in your agency at how you can better your agency and how you can strengthen your own skills. Did I miss anyone? Dina, did I miss you?
I snuck on. Hey everyone, I'm Deanna Harrington. I'm with NC CASA. Apologize for sneaking in a little late. Had to get the baby settled. Back from maternity leave, and just happy to be here and just be a quiet observer in the background.
All right. So what we're going to do today, if you would go ahead and start the slideshow, please, Leah. We're going to do a combination of presentation and discussion. Those of you who have been in workshops with me before know that I'll come to you as a whole group and ask you for ideas, and I will have you work in small groups to share examples. What we're going to do today is to look at both bridge building and adversarial stances. This is called part one. And out of your examples today and out of what you decide you'd like to learn more about, I'll develop a part two and we can meet again. So next slide, please. So what is advocacy? This is a definition that you can find if you just go to the web or if you go to a dictionary, that advocacy involves action. It supports or defends a position, a person, a cause. It makes recommendations. It can argue for a cause, and it can plead on behalf of others. So I'd like you to just sit for a minute and think about advocates in your agency and yourself. If you're a parent, you've probably advocated for your child in some way. You may have advocated for survivors or their families. Considering this definition, just think about, I hope you've got paper and pencil or phone or something by you to just make quick notes, but what are words or phrases that come to mind for you when you think of advocacy and when you see this definition? What comes to your mind? So if you could just popcorn out some of the comments that you're thinking. So one person, Maria, said representation. Just make your comments. What comes to mind? Helper, aiding, listening ear. Opening up access. Picket signs. Now that's an interesting comment. Let's see. If I have some power, credibility or expertise or licensure, I can use that power to speak out for someone who may not have as much of that kind of power. Being the middle person. Advocates remind me of the best friends everyone should have. They always have your best interest. Connector. I have several people in my family who work in the medical field. And one of the things they talk about is how important it is when family members are able to be present for people, to be able to advocate on their behalf, and how tough that has been with the pandemic. It's been harder to advocate in some scenarios and in some arenas. All right. So go to the next slide, Leah. Yeah, someone said it's been harder to advocate for my kids during the pandemic. Yes. So I wanted to offer this workshop because I want to be able to expand capacity for everyone who advocates, whether we advocate in a work situation or we advocate in other areas of our lives. When we have more skills, more concepts, our confidence is increased and our competence is increased. So I'm hoping that what we do together today helps to increase confidence, competence, and how you are in the world. Lets you be better placed for how you approach situations, increases your skills. Next slide. All right, so we're going to talk about two approaches. We're going to talk about bridge building, and we're going to talk about an adversarial approach. And when I asked you the question about what was your interest in being here today, where do you work? One of you said, I only have thought of advocacy from a bridge building place. I haven't thought about it from an adversarial stance. So let me just talk about that for a minute. Then I'm going to introduce you to each of the stances and I'll have you go into small groups for examples. So when we are advocating, let me start over. I should probably give you an example and just bust myself right from the beginning. Okay, so way back when, like probably 1976 or 77, one of the things that I did was I was an advocate for the Seattle Rape Crisis Center. And in those days, what we did was go out in twos to meet with the victims, the survivors, wherever they were. So we got called out to this woman's apartment. She was on the first floor. A stranger had broken in, and there was a police officer with her. And I get there and he's telling her, you know, you really shouldn't live on the first floor. That's just not good. It's too easy for people to break in. You might want to consider moving. So I'm like paying attention. I think to myself, okay, I got his name, I got his badge number. I'm writing a letter. This guy is like just out of bounds. So he leaves, and I'm working with this woman for about, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. And then I say to her, so the police officer took information from you, and how did you feel about how he was with you? And she said, he was fabulous. He was fabulous. Do you realize he stayed here with me until you got here? I felt safe. He relayed the information he needed to over the phone. I felt like I had support and safety. I thought, oh crap, okay. So I guess I am writing a letter, but it's not the one I thought I was going to write. I was going to write a letter that was absolutely from an adversarial position. And instead, what I realized was this was a bridge building position. This was about what we have in common, what we can do to meet each other, rather than how we have to square off. And I want you to know that there are times and places for each. So again, if you would take just a minute and write down just a couple of words or phrases, what comes to mind when you think about bridge building for advocates, and what comes to mind when you think about adversarial, whether it's when you're advocating for your kids, whether you're advocating for a survivor or a client. So just write down a couple of phrases. Okay. So bridge building, Rebecca said, finding commonality, rapport, connection, friendly, bridge building, making partnerships in the community, knowing how everyone will work together, bridge building, having resources ready to offer to clients, bridge building, connecting dots or common purpose, adversarial, when you have to step up for the survivor, adversarial, conflict, confrontation, someone is wrong and someone, me, is right. That's always my favorite. Yes, I'm right. Okay. Let's see, bridge building, leveraging each other's strengths. So I'm taking some pictures of what's in the chat because I will revise the slideshow and send it back to you so that it has your comments as well in it. Bridge building, leveraging each other's strengths, and adversarial, holding the line, taking a stance. Bridge building, finding common ground and working together. Adversarial, taking a stance or a side that is different. All right, I love this. One or two more, and then we'll move on. Anybody else? I just don't want to miss anybody. Okay, next slide, please, Leah. So when I did some research and thought about experience with bridge building and adversarial stances, I thought both about approaches and skills. And you can see how they can cross. I'll start with bridge building. We're going to go through some of these. So one of the things you talked about when you talked about this workshop, someone said, when it came to advocacy, they said being a listening ear. However, whatever our stance, we have to have strong listening skills for advocacy. We have to be able to pause, to clarify what's going on, and to paraphrase so that people know that we're understanding them. And from a bridge building place, part of what clarifying and paraphrasing does is it helps to make those connections and to make clear the common ground. And in an adversarial stance, what clarifying and paraphrasing can do is to help slow it down. Because one of the tactics with an adversarial stance is to speed things up, to be very speedy, to talk over, to interrupt. And so to be able to keep pausing and clarifying and paraphrasing helps to slow some of that down. With bridge building, reflective practice becomes critical, reflecting on our own practice. I want to make sure I'm avoiding assumptions. So I want to keep checking out what I'm thinking. I have a friend whose favorite phrase is, the story I'm making up about this. Another way is to say, I want to be sure I understand, right? However we check assumptions. Brene Brown. The ability to hold ambiguity, right? The ability to be able to be all right with uncertainty. I don't know what's going to happen right now. Could be this, could be that, could be both and having a non-anxious presence. Reflective practice helps us to strengthen our ability to have a non-anxious presence. I'm going through these skills and approaches because you can then say back to me a little later in the workshop which ones we want to focus on. We want to have conflict resolution skills that emphasize collaboration and compromise, and we want to have assertiveness skills, even if it means I sound like a broken record. An adversarial stance may very well include the ability to stand up to bullying, conflict resolution skills with an emphasis on competition. And we're going to talk about what the differences are in the various conflict resolution styles, and negotiation skills. So being able to ask good questions in a fairly crisp manner, shifting from win-lose to compromise, constantly looking for trade-offs, and presenting multiple strategies simultaneously. One of the things that I try to avoid when I'm in an adversarial situation is presenting one strategy, which then just gets shot down, or even presenting two, putting people in an either or, and somehow we end up in this tug of war. So the more strategies I can give that really are clear, that I've listened and I've heard, increases creativity. So let me give you an example of each. I was a dean of students for a number of years at a university, and the average age of the adults at the university, of the students, was 35. So these are students with a lot of life skills, with experience. And when they would come and there would be something that they were quite upset about, I needed to listen for what was not only valid, but what needed to be acknowledged and honored. So I would listen very carefully. And I did not think in terms of, they would often come and say, I'm filing a grievance and I want this faculty member fired, or I'm filing a grievance and I want this amount of money, or I can't believe that this faculty member said such and such. They're so, they seem like they're smart. I mean, one of the complaints that came to me was a young woman who was from the Chinook tribe in Washington State, and she would introduce herself as, I'm a mixed blood Chinook. She had blue eyes, she had light brown hair, she had light brown skin, and she had been on her tribal council, and she was now in school getting her master's degree. Well, one of the faculty, when she introduced herself, said something like, you don't look Indian. You don't look like an Indian. Okay. So it was always shocking and appalling and truly amazing to me when people made statements that they didn't understand even were completely inappropriate and off the wall. But that happened frequently. So she came in with an adversarial stance. So asking really good questions about what did she want? Well, she was wounded and she did not want that to happen to someone else. And she was coming to me. So even though this was a faculty member she liked, she was hesitant to do that. So that was an adversarial stance that we were able to shift to bridge building. Now I'll give you an adversarial stance that did not shift to bridge building, and that's being on either side of the table in a union negotiation, or being on different sides of the table with peer agencies when we're going for the same amount of money, the same pot of money. And sometimes we can build bridges and sometimes we can't. When I think about bridge building, I have many more examples of doing training with law enforcement and training with medical personnel and constantly looking for common ground and staying out of my assumptions that they're not going to understand. And finding that sometimes I felt like it was in an adversarial stance when an officer or someone, anyone in law enforcement would say something about, Black Lives Matter needs to go away. And I would find myself just, first of all, kind of stunned that someone would say that. And second of all, saying, that's actually really important to me. And I'd like to know what's really important for you when you're looking at law enforcement standards. I'd like to know what's important to you. I'd like to know what's important when it comes to policing for you. Trying to find some way to open up how I can hear from other folks. So I would like you to, so first I'd like to pause and see if there are questions about anything that is written here. Or comments.
Hey, this is Brittany. I have a question based on your last example. How do you feel like, particularly when you are in a context of people with different racial backgrounds, and someone says something like, I wish Black Lives Matter would go away, how do you feel like you're able to also show up respectfully for the people of color that are in that space when trying to build bridges with someone who says something like that?
So I'm going to pause because I'd like to know if anybody else wants to answer it. I don't want to always answer just from my stance. I'd love to know if there are others who'd like to comment.
I go back to like education. I kind of take that stance, I guess, with the adversarial position. And I read a book I highly recommend for everyone called Mental Immunity. It's by Andy Norman. And he talks a little bit about how to engage with another person who have the facts. Pretty much, to summarize it, I'm doing a bad job at summarizing the book, but it's all about, questioning the other person's maybe perspective, and then like educating or offering your own facts or statistics or evidence, but in a stance that's offering education, so to speak. And it's always the book always goes toward if that's going to work, only if the other person's willing to listen, though, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the underlying condition. Are people willing to engage and listen? Other comments? You know, folks, if you haven't been in this situation, you very well might be at some point. I have been in situations where I had students do a lifeline and present about an ancestor, and I had quite a diverse class. And this one white woman presented on an ancestor who was a member of the KKK, and how he was such a loving, giving man. It was like you could almost feel the air go out of the room as everybody went, and it was it was just so painful to have to say, this is not an appropriate example. And I was able to go to, this is the rubric for what we're presenting. And one of the things about the rubric had to do with multiculturalism, and that there was no consideration for how that impacted, or what the multicultural considerations were of what that man had likely done in his life. None of which, of course, it was such an amazing example of whitewashing. It really kind of took my breath away. I think a lot of you know my mom's Blackfoot and Scots, and my dad's full-blooded German. And so spending time in Indian country, I am, first of all, I would constantly, everybody would look at me and think white, not think that I was part of the Kainai clan of the Blackfoot tribe in Southern Alberta. And I was constantly getting warned not to hang out at powwows and to be really careful because, there's all the drunk Indians. And I constantly had to say, you have to stop telling me those stories. You have to stop with these, what you consider very funny anecdotes. They're not funny to me. And when I think about the specific example of what happens with law enforcement and Black Lives Matter, depending on who I'm with, I will either say Black Lives Matter and a healthy law enforcement department are not mutually exclusive. And I have so many examples of when people of color have really suffered at the hands of police. And I have said back to law enforcement, because I've done so much training with them, including Alaska State Troopers, village public safety officers. And I will say to them, you tell me, what's a good police officer? And how do police officers work well in communities of color? How do you do that? I mean, Alaska figured out white troopers couldn't work in villages. They had to do something different. So again, I'm very interested in your examples. What have you encountered and how have you responded? And does our silence mean that we avoid and are silent?
Historically, in professional spaces, I know I'm embarrassed, but honest enough to say that I have kind of let comments go and kind of moved to the next topic or something like that. In my personal life, when I felt like there was more investment in the relationship, I've been able to kind of take the step back and tease out, okay, well, why is it that you feel that these things are mutually exclusive? Why is it that these two ideas can't coexist? And then, that does require a time investment, and it requires a relationship investment. That I don't always feel safe enough to embark on in those professional relationships.
Okay.
I had a situation when I first started at Our Voice. I started as a volunteer, and I was in a cohort with other volunteers who had varying levels of experience. And there was one white woman who really wanted to challenge my now supervisee, but at the time the facilitator, who is a person of color, on a variety of subjects. But the one that really got to me was any kind of framing of like, people of color maybe very well might not want to access law enforcement because it's not a safe system for them, was met with, how dare you talk poorly about law enforcement? Or there was another one that was about second wave feminism centering white women that she did not appreciate. But it was kind of a fascinating thing because she would bring it back to, you're ignoring the poor white women. She was like, but they're still white. And so I didn't know this person at all, but felt a responsibility as another white woman to not have the burden fall on this person of color to explain this to her beyond what they already had. And so I ended up reaching out to her via email and sent a very, very long email with a lot of citations and links. And to Daniela's point, it was a lot of, I had the time at that point because I wasn't working and I had the time to do it. And I felt like we had been in spaces where there had been some level of vulnerability and she had seen how I showed up and we didn't really know each other, but I felt like I'm going to take a shot at least. I don't think it shifted her paradigm actually, but I do think that I made it clear that I wasn't just going to be silent in those moments and like I was going to speak up moving forward. And I said in that email, like, I think as another white woman, I have a responsibility to tell you that you're not showing up very, very well. And like, this isn't looking good. So I think to Daniela's point, I think that paradigm shifts only happen if there's trust built, but it still feels better to say something rather.
So I think that's right. We end up with disorienting dilemmas, right? When something actually impacts us and challenges us and sort of knocks us sideways, it might in fact create some hole in our armor that we have against learning about something in particular. The other thing that I think is that we often have to hear it more than once, right? So if we can speak up, we're contributing to that voice that says, this is really what we want to be holding. So what I would like to do is I would like to have you move into small groups. We're going to come back out of the small groups and share examples. So I'd like you to take the information, the approaches, bridge building and adversarial, and I'd like you to go into your small groups and do two things. First, I'd like you to come up with just an example of either bridge building or an adversarial stance. An example that as a small group, you'll share back in the room about what you learned about that. And the other thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to consider, is there a skill or something, a muscle you want to strengthen for advocacy, either in bridge building or in an adversarial stance? So Leah will put you into small groups. You'll get a little note to join and please click on it and say, okay. And we will be in small groups for about, let's do 15, no, too long, 12 minutes.
And we're working on getting the breakout room set up right now.
Okay. So we know, right. So we know that we want to do more of that. This is the other piece I want to introduce you to. The Thomas Kilman Conflict Resolution Inventory. The name is two men, Thomas and Kilman, their last names. And the inventory you can take for free online. You can also pay to take it. And what it does is it talks about these styles, and it says that the styles really are based on assertiveness and based on cooperation. It sort of measures them along two axes, and each style has its time and place. And what I would love for you to do is to take the inventory if you haven't, so that when we come back together, we can talk about the styles, because the styles also will tell you a lot about what needs to strengthen for you to be able to look at your adversarial skills and your bridge building skills. So let's talk about each of them. So first of all, avoidance. Avoidance is not assertive and it's not cooperative, right? When we think about a time when you or a client have avoided conflict, you're not trying to satisfy your own concerns. You're not trying to satisfy anyone else's concerns. It's often the approach our clients take when they don't want to get hurt. Is there a way for me to avoid this conflict? If I walk on eggshells enough, if I clean the house enough, if I'm just quiet and I back up enough, right? When you think about accommodation, accommodation is not assertive. However, it is cooperative. So you're trying to satisfy the other person's concerns. What you've done with accommodation is you've put relationship as more important than the task. So for example, the sort of classic example is, what do you want to do for dinner? I don't care, whatever you want, right? The task isn't important. What you eat, whether it's pizza or Thai food or a hamburger or salmon, what you eat isn't as important as the other person being happy. And accommodation is absolutely appropriate when the task doesn't matter to you. When it doesn't matter. When you accommodate and the task does matter, you've then given up some of your power. Now I want to talk about competition and collaboration, and then we'll go to compromise. So competition is assertive and it's not cooperative. So you're trying to satisfy your own concerns at the other person's expense, perhaps, right? Competition is completely appropriate at the Super Bowl. Yeah, the dogs have decided to compete for a moment. Let's see. Competition is also really appropriate in an emergency. So if someone's unable to breathe, please don't spend time compromising and avoiding about who's going to help them breathe. It's like, whoever has the most skill, just say it and get in there and do it, right? You take charge. So it's not cooperative. It's not saying, okay, all those of you with skills, 1, 2, 3, 4, show me 1 to 5. No, no, it's taking charge. Collaboration is assertive and cooperative, right? We're trying to find a win-win solution that's going to satisfy all involved. And as you know, collaboration takes the most time to really go for, we both want to win, and take it out of win-lose. Take it into, how can we come to a best solution that best meets the needs of everyone here? All right, it takes time. Compromise is often where you come to from both competition and collaboration when you're engaged in an interpersonal conflict, right? It can be assertive and it can be cooperative. Not to the extent that collaboration is. You're trying to find an acceptable solution. It may not be the best. It may not be 5, maybe it's 3, right? But you're trying to find an acceptable solution that at least partially satisfies the people concerned. Now, here's the deal, right? Think about your approach. If you're competing, if you so bad want that grant and you so bad don't want that other agency to get it, because let's face it, we are right and they are wrong, then when we compromise, we're going to feel like we lost. If you got any money at all, it's going to be like, oh, babe. I mean, we just are not going to want you to have money. All right. It's a hard place to go. Whereas if I come at it from collaboration, okay, I don't agree with your stance. However, you are serving some people in this county, in this area. And I just can't figure out how to best meet all of our needs. I mean, we both want all of it, or we both want such a significant amount of it. But at least now when I compromise, I'm coming from a place of right from the beginning, I've wanted both of us to win. I've wanted both of us to feel good. I have wanted to respect the relationship between us, right? When I start from competition, I'm not starting from respecting the relationship. So that's the difference in the approaches. And the next time that we meet, we'll go even more deeply into conflict resolution. And then we'll go more deeply into the approaches around advocacy. And we now have like 3 or 4 minutes left. If you would stop sharing, please. So kind of last words, if anybody has something they'd like to say as we go out, I want to say I'm honored to be with you again. It's been lovely. I'm so glad when you come. I'm glad when you get a chance to talk to each other and make connections. We all know the importance of that. Comments? Okay. Brittany, yeah.
Is the next part of this scheduled already?
Leah?
Yes, it is. You can register for it on Coalition Manager. Let me look. I don't remember the date off the top of my head, but I can tell you folks.
And I may have already even signed up for it. I just signed up for a few today. All right, thank you.
I think the next one is March 2nd.
All right.
And I'll put the link in the chat for folks.
And what I'll do is follow up on the slideshow and add a couple of slides. I send them to Leah and to Alexandra, and then they'll send them out to all of you. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a really good rest of your month. Lovely to see you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.